Good evening, everyone. I'm stepping in as chair for this evening. Mayor Snively is not going to be here this evening. So I'll call the meeting to order. Any declarations of conflict of interest? I see none. So we need an adoption of the published agenda for this evening. Moved by Councillor Bjorkman and supported by Councillor Guerin. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And we'll move right into reports from administration. We have Mr. Sweet to start us off with a verbal report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd like to welcome council, staff, residents to the town's third 2022 budget deliberation meeting. So to start the meeting, I'd like to provide a quick summary of where we currently stand. It's been a while since we last met. It was December 13th, our last budget meeting. And after the last budget meeting, council passed 3 resolutions. So just a quick update that the 2022 operating budget as presented be adopted in principle, and that the OPP traffic enforcement position be removed in the amount of 190,000, and that these funds be reallocated to the 2022 capital budget for further deliberations. The council approved the waiver of rental fees for the use of the sport fields at Harrell Soccer Complex from January 1st to December 31st, 2022. And that any funding from the fiscal year 2022 and any 2021 projects that remain outstanding as of December 31st, 2021 do not appear in the 2022 budget as presented, so long as the project does not exceed previously approved funding. So those 3 were approved at the last budget by council. And for tonight's meeting, administration's goal would have the following 3 motions passed then at tonight's meeting: that the 2022 capital budget as presented be adopted in principle, inclusive of all capital adjustments summarized in Table B; that any excess from additional Ontario Community Infrastructure Funds, OCIF, received in the amount of $9,111,741 be transferred and held in reserve until the approval and completion of eligible projects occur. And finally, that any portion of the $190,000 reallocated from operating capital at the December 13th meeting remain unused, be transferred into a reserve designated for the purchase of new capital assets. So our Director of Corporate Services, Kate Jarusevich, will kind of go in order of those. And I'll turn it over to Kate at this time.
Through the chair, welcome everyone. So I am going to pull up Table B on the screen, and I'm going to walk through first all OCIF projects that were left as outstanding from our last budget meeting. After that, after we walk through these 4 projects, I will ask council if they have anything else that they'd like to add that would qualify for OCIF funding, and then we'll move on to the property tax supported projects. So just bear with me while I share my screen. So this is our Table B that was included in the agenda. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that we can discuss the first few projects. Can council see this okay? Okay, thank you. So the first project being sidewalks between Thomas and Bell. And the project cost was estimated at $70,000, and that would qualify under the OCIF funding stream. So as you can see here, just to give you some context of what you're looking at, the $911,000 in additional OCIF funding that we received is noted right here. You can see where my cursor is circling. And so if it was eligible to be funded from that stream, it has been noted as such. So you can see that the first 3 projects would qualify. and I will walk through each of these projects. The first being, as mentioned, the sidewalks between Thomas and Bell at a cost of $70,000. The second project being a sidewalk trail paved path on Irwin between County Road 34 and Gosfield. The cost was estimated at $120,000 for this project. And phase 1 of Walnut Street rehabilitation, which would be the engineering component, estimated at a cost of $160,000. Also brought forward to us in the past few weeks is the County Road 50 paved trail extension. I just want to provide council a bit of an update on this. We were able to chat with a manager over at the county, and he provided us with a rough cost estimate to complete the entire link. That estimate being a total of $2 million. So for our 60% cost share, we'd be looking at a total cost of $1.2 million. The construction would not be able to commence until 2023, and that's based on the county and the fact that they've already approved their 2022 roadworks. So at this point, we'll open up the floor to council for discussion on these projects. Any questions, we're happy to answer.
Councillor Bjorkman first.
Thank you, Mayor, very much. Thank you through the chair and to our director. So are you saying that the paved shoulders for County Road 50, we don't have a dollar value in there, but they do qualify under OCIF? Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct. Yeah, we received direct confirmation from our analyst, and that would qualify. Our recommendation at this point would be if council wished to choose an amount of that funding to be held in reserve, we are allowed to hold that funding for 5 years. So what you could potentially see is the project may not be started till 2023, but the town would be in a position to potentially fully fund the project in 2023 if it were to earmark OCIF monies towards this, specifically the top-up funding.
Okay, so further to that, that is my question. So if we say we want to start a reserve now, so that over the next 3 or 4 years, we can continue to add to that and actually have the money in hand as the county is progressing down the road, we can use OCIF funding for that. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
And Councillor Bondi.
Thank you, Chair Milosh. There is a lot of push for County Road 50, and rightfully so. County Road 50 going west. Through my research, I've read that the county, sorry, I'll shut my door, my little ones, that the county is prepared to do that portion. They're going to start coming our way this year in Amherstburg, and so the next logical section is from the Meadows Road to where we've left off. So if we can earmark, $500,000-600,000 this year, $500,000-600,000 next year. I know many residents want it done in 2022, but I don't think it's possible. And I don't think that the county can even get it done this year, even if we had all our money, because they're always 1-2 steps ahead. They do an excellent road plan, and everything that they have committed is going through. So I would like to see that. I'm not sure if at some point we can make a motion, but it just makes sense finishing off that trail. It's widely used. It's part of the plan, and it would be really nice to have that in our plan. So I'm excited if we can save at least 500,000 of our OCIF funding. And I think we had 100,000 already. So that would give us 600,000 in the 2022 budget. Thank you.
Councillor Bondi. Councillor Vanderdolen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I don't know where all these emailing people got the idea that anyone's opposed to this. This entire council has been unanimously in support of paving these shoulders and completing this for what, 10 years? No one's ever said we wouldn't do it. It's just a matter of timing, who's in charge, whose jurisdiction it is, and of course, money. And as a lot of people don't seem to understand, this is a county road that we don't control, even though we'd be on the hook for 60%. I'm all in favor of putting some money aside for it starting right now, because we've always, all of us, been in favor of this. Question is, how much do we put aside, and do we allow it to impact taxes this year, which I would be opposed to? But I'm certainly in favor of starting to put money aside and to do this. But as for doing it this year, well, that's a pipe dream. We're already too late for that. The way construction works is that contracts are already now being fulfilled. Work crews are already being assigned. Equipment's being assigned. We couldn't do anything in 2022, even without, put aside the engineering that has to be done first. So I think some people may have been misled about how quickly this could be done, but it will be done, and it will be done by this council, which is great.
Councillor Vanderdolen. Councillor Guerin.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so just trying to wrap my head around the timeline. So the county is going to do that portion of the road, and they'll be ready to do it by 2023. Am I correct in that?
Mr. Sweet.
Through your deputy mayor. Yes. So in 2022, the county's going to go from Dunn Road to Dahinda. They're going to do road rehab, and there's already a shoulder there, but it doesn't meet the current standards. So they're going to extend that width. In 2023, they'll either extend it in phases, or depending on funding available by the municipality, they could potentially do the full stretch to town of Amherstburg.
Okay, so they're planning on doing the road in 2023, that portion we're talking about, putting shoulders to. And if we don't put in the 60%, they just will do the road and no shoulders. Am I getting that correct?
Councillor Guerin.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
That's correct, Councillor Guerin.
Okay,
The town, whatever municipality they're working in has to put up 60% of the cost to get the county's 40%.
right. So they're positioned to do that. They're willing to put their 40 in. We have to have ours there in place by the time they're ready to actually do the work, which is 2023. So that leaves us this year to put some money towards it, and next year. And then we've got to be there. Okay, so I just wanted to get that fact. Thanks.
Councillor Guerin. I'll just say nobody else has their hand up there, so I'll just say that I too believe that this is a good strategy. It's been our strategy all along to finish the trail there as the county determines that they have the funds to redo that particular section of the road. It only makes sense. It's a cost savings if you can do both the shoulders and the road at the same time. So it makes sense. And we've thought all along that we want to do it not only just for the residents, which is important as it is, but also as a tourism attraction. And I think that that's been our goal for a number of years, to make County Road 50 more attractive as far as a tourist destination. And so it does make sense. So I just wanted to add my comment. Councillor Bondi.
Is there a way then, Chair Malott, can make a motion to put 500,000 of the OCIF funds to earmark this project and keep the 100,000 that's in the trails? If we say it's going to be around 1.2 million, and try to do 600,000 in this year's budget and 600,000 in next year's? Is that reasonable?
I think so, Councillor Bondi. And as far as that goes, I think in the next budget, maybe how we should be looking at it is that County Road 50 is a project on its own, the trail on County Road 50, not part of the trails budget, but that we want to finish that trail and make that a separate budget item so that we have the funds set aside, and then the next council can decide if it's too much, if they do or don't have the ability to fund it totally in 2023, they'll have to make that decision. But I think it's a project on its own that we want to have, not only for the residents, but as a tourism attraction as well. And I think there's other portions of the town that are crying for a portion of that trails money for different project. I know Councillor Verbeek has been asking about from Coen Park to the Greenway. There's a number of residents in Essex that are asking for some of the trail work here to be done as well. So I think having it as a separate budget, maybe in the 23 budget, would be a good idea. So yes, if you want to, now, Kate, I just want to ask, do we want to pencil in 500K and see where we go with the rest, or do we just want a motion per item?
Through the chair, that'll be up to council. The amount of projects currently outstanding that were brought up at last meeting, their total equates to $350,000. So with that $500,000 earmarked, there's still enough OCIF funding for those 3 projects. It's just a matter of if there's other projects that council wants. There is only $411,000 of OCIF available after that is earmarked.
Projects that were committed to, are they already motioned to be committed to? Okay, so I think maybe what we do is we pencil these in, and
Okay.
at the end we'll
Sounds good.
decide which ones then. Thank you. I seen a hand up. Councillor Bjorkman?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to the director again, would there be is it possible to work with the county to say, let's say we want to take 3 years to put that money aside, because we're looking at other projects that need to be done, but we want to commit to it. Is there a way for us to say, you know what, can we put away, 500,000 this year, 300,000 next year, and 300,000 the year after, so that we're not putting a lot of weight all in one budget, because there's always those other trails, there's always those other things that need to be done, so that we could have a reserve that's directed just to this project that we commit to, which isn't going to be a big burden on the next council when they're trying to decide. Would the county be open to us extending our fundraising for another year?
To answer that question?
Through the chair, in our preliminary meetings with the county, they are open to some sort of deferral arrangement should the need be.
Councillor Bowman?
I like the 3-year idea, and even if the project did happen to fly in 2023, at least that council would have the ability to raise a portion of the money and then finance it for 1 year until the next budget to go spread it over 3 years. So I like the 3-year idea. I think it gives the future council a little more flexibility, but understanding that it could fly in 2023. So it would keep all the doors open. Thank you.
Councillor Verbeek?
Thanks. Through you, Deputy Mayor. Of course, I support earmarking some money for this project simply because it's going to be a big price tag and we don't want it to come at us at once. If we could push it across 3 years, that would be, I liked Councillor Bjorkman's suggestion there. Earmarking the money, committing to, matching the county with our 40% signals to the county that we're getting prepared to move ahead, lets our constituents know that they've been heard for years on this, and this council is finally taking the action and making the commitment to do this on their behalf, because I think everyone here in this room believes in this project and supports it. That being said, I also hope that we're going to do the same thing towards Coen when we move. I think that's the next conversation though. But I have a question for Kate. You keep hearing me. I've been building up more and more about putting some money away for the big project, that the big elephant in the room that is addressing McGregor and the sewage capacity. Is this the same money that would be used to put into reserve towards that project? Because we've heard that it's going to be in the millions, and that because the developers are already at the table, we are going to have to address it sooner than later. Is this the same pool of money that we could possibly start that reserve with? Or is that from somewhere else?
Yeah, through the chair, OCIF, one of the restrictions is that it cannot be for a project related to growth. So that would not qualify for OCIF uses. However, the next section that we will cover is the $190,000 of tax supported revenues, which is unrestricted.
Thanks, Kate. Tell me when it's time to make my case for some Coen funds.
Thank you, Councillor Verbeek. Any other suggestions on how we want to see this money used? Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Chair Malash. I'm going to do the same pitch I've always done about Walnut Street in Harrow, and at least see if we can get the engineering done. That is a road that has been in the budget off and on for multiple years, probably since my time on council. I started in 2010. And if council supports it, great. And if not, there's always next year.
Verbeek?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just wondering, because we just all did our work with Corinne on our, our wishes for the paved shoulders, and I'm just wondering, can this be earmarked the same as the money we're going to put aside for County 15, but just to be used as whatever comes up on ECAT's next project, because if we're fortunate and we can get that piece of County Road 12, a trunk done from 15 over, would be nice to have a reserve started for, whatever trails the county deems next, kind of thing. I get that we're going to put a big portion towards that's in reserve for 50, but maybe we could have money reserved for whatever the county has come up next. It's a thought. I'm not married to it or anything, just spitballing.
Thank you, Councillor Verbeek. Councillor Bjorkman?
Thank you, through the chair and to the director. So we've already kind of penciled in, is the engineering study for Walnut, we're looking at $500,000 for the paved shoulders, the sidewalks on Thomas and Bell. So we're still have, we're looking at $300,000 to $400,000 we're still talking about.
Through the chair, I'm just going to share my screen again so we can all follow exactly where we're at and how much funding's left for the OCIF. Just bear with me. And I do just want to note, because the $500,000 is going into reserve, that actually comes out of operating. So I'll explain that in 1 second. It wouldn't be a capital project present. Doug's shaking his head at me. Just bear with me. So as you can see here, OCIF flows through operating, and the 500,000 I have noted here. So remaining funds for OCIF for discussion is $411,000. If we look at the 3 projects in question, we're looking at a cost of $350,000. So there is sufficient funding available for all 3 of these. Does that help, or is there any further questions at this point?
Well, that helps, but it helps me focus what I wanted to say next. I think the other street we keep talking about and we need to set funds aside for is Irwin in Essex Center. So I would like to see whatever's left here make sure that we get a reserve started to take care of Irwin. That would be my suggestion for what's remaining.
Counselor Bjorkman, Counselor Verbeek.
Hi, thanks again. So council heard how we have a reserve started for Coen, and that finally Amherstburg's on board with us, and that we're having that topical done and a strategic plan drawn up. And so when the time comes, it would be really cool if we could have our half of the first big project, which is going to probably come in over $600,000, right? Because it's going to be either the equipment or the splash pad. So if we were able to earmark 100,000 for that reserve tonight, then there would be 341 tucked away for our half of the first major project when we move forward, hopefully next year. So that'll be my request.
Mr. Sweet's gonna talk to you about that.
Yes.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just for clarification, Councilor Verbeek, right now, we're still just referring to funding left through the additional OCIF funding, which can only be used for roads, trail, bridges, et cetera. So once kind of that 411 that Director Jurusevich mentioned, once that's kind of allocated, which I think what's out there right now is Councilor Bjorkman is suggesting that remaining fund be put in reserve for Irwin Street.
Irwin.
And if council approves that, OCIF additional funding is now taken care of, and we can move on to the tax base funding left.
I can stop bouncing in my chair and jumping ahead.
Thank you, Counselor Verbeek. Counselor Bowman, and then Counselor Guerin.
I'm just going to support the funding going for Irwin because that's been on the radar since I've been on council, and that's a long time. So it's time we do something with it. There's no question about it. So I support Mr. Bjorkman's suggestion.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Guerin.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So just circling back to those projects that were on that list, Walnut, because we have this money, Walnut is one we could get done and we can knock off and I get all that. Holding there's maybe $61,000 that looks like left over to put towards Irwin, which is not it's not going to make a drop in the bucket. What do we got? What do we have left on the actual tax base? Tax supported money we can use for roads and stuff. What is that number we're at?
Yes, Director Jurusevich will answer that.
Through the chair, Councillor Guerin, that's sitting at 190,000. Just a note that Director Gerard brought up as well. Irwin construction would be replacement, so it would qualify to be funded through AMP as well.
Okay. And is there a number for that that's left, or is that spoken for already?
Through the chair, we've allocated all of those funds at this point.
Okay, so my council colleagues, what we're left dealing with here, if we approve the sidewalks for Bell Thomas, we approved the Walnut, and there was another one on there as well. I can't remember what it was. It leaves around $60,000 to go towards what Councilor Bjorkman is saying. Let's set it aside for Irwin Street, and another 100 and was that 90,000? I think was the number that you gave me on the tax that's left. Is that correct? So we've got it, but we're working with about $250,000 here.
Through the chair, you are correct, Councillor Guerin.
Okay, thanks.
Do we want to see the listing up on the screen so that we can see what we've penciled in to use up the funds? Director Jurusevich, could you put that up on the screen just so we can see? Everybody's got a good idea.
The chair, this would fully allocate OCIF, accompanied by a $500,000 contribution to reserve to be dedicated towards County Road 50 extension.
So I don't know if everyone's comfortable with what we see on the screen there, but if we are, we can move forward with a motion. Councillor Van der Dolen?
Yes, I'll move with it. We go ahead with it.
I think Councillor Bowman, were you seconding? Okay, Councillor Bjorkman? Did you have a comment or just okay? Okay. Any comments on the motion? Then I'll ask the question. All in favor? Moving those projects forward? That's unanimous. We will move the projects forward as listed. So I'm going to go back to Director Grusevich. We have another set of monies that you want to talk about?
Through the chair, thank you. So our Director Sweet mentioned it earlier. There is $190,000 that was approved by motion at the last council meeting to be directed into the capital fund for 2022 capital projects. So I just want to provide a little bit of background. Administration is recommending that any portion of the $190,000 that isn't designated tonight be put into a reserve for the purchase of new general assets. In the past, funding models for new assets were identified and annual reserve contributions were done until funding was reached. This model began phasing out in 2022, and the focus shifted to an annual asset management plan contribution to reserve, as well as the fundings of the streetscape projects. During this time, town relied on reserves and grant monies to fund the purchase of new capital assets outside of streetscapes. Administration believes that some sort of effort should be made to establish and continue contributing to a specific reserve for the purchase of new assets. And this motion would be a starting point for that. We are recommending a base of $50,000. This would also be a reserve that could be used should a capital project come in over during the year, which we have been noting that happening quite often due to COVID pressures. So at this point, the last meeting, there was one item brought up for consideration by council, and that was a potential reserve contribution to Coen Park. So that was the property tax supported project that was raised, and no set amount has been brought forward by council, but administration is recommending a minimum of $50,000 be put towards that as well. But we'll open the floor up to council.
Councillor Bjorkman?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to council, we had quite a drawn out discussion with regard to the $190,000 came from not following through with a traffic enforcement officer, and a lot of the conversation circled around that. You know, we've been trying to change things, trying to change the culture. We had to do something new in order to try to make this work. So in looking into other options and ways to create data-fueled information to make those decisions, looking at a couple of our neighbors, they use different designs, but they're pretty much called black cat boxes to collect data on roads. Now this data, this isn't buying a trailer that says, here's how fast you're going. I use those trailers just to calibrate my foot to make sure I'm actually going the speed I think I'm going. They don't really do anything because they don't provide any deterrent. What these boxes do is they collect the data of vehicles going down the road. They don't just count vehicles, they measure how fast those vehicles are going. They measure how many vehicles there are. They measure how many feet between vehicles, if people are trailing, if it's racing, that sort of thing. So it's real data in real time that you can collect and bring that to traffic enforcement and say, you know what, this isn't subjective. This isn't somebody, and no disrespect, but it's not somebody sitting on their porch watching a car go by saying, that car was doing at least 80 down my road. This is real data that we can take and give to our traffic enforcement and say, we want you to start watching this road. And we know it's between these times that we're having issues. So a lot more bang for our buck in collecting hard data that we can share with our enforcement. And maybe that's a change that we can use to make a difference. I know that Director Gerard, he's got some information with regard to costs and things like that. So if I could ask him to share that with council.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. We actually do own one Black Hat device now that we utilize for our traffic counting. We purchased that, I want to say maybe 3 to 5 years ago, which is what we use for our traffic collection and our analysis for the speed limit reviews for the policy that we implemented last year. In order to buy those today, I think they would probably be in the ballpark of $5,000 to $8,000 a piece. We could certainly purchase another or two if you wanted to collect more data on a more frequent basis. It's certainly something that we could do.
Continue, Councillor Bjorkman then.
So just in fault to that. So if we're looking at an investment of, let's say, $20,000 with taxes and everything in to get 2 more of these and be able to move them throughout our community at will, and it's going to cost, what do we need, another $10,000 or $15,000 through the year to pay for somebody to actually read the data, collect it, and disperse it. Well, maybe for $50,000, we can collect real data, share it with our enforcement people, and see if that can help us where we target what's going on. And we can do that with the force we have today. Now it's also an asset we have in our arsenal that we don't have to pay for again next year. So I think it's something that we should look at to give us a couple more tools to see if we can make a change in our traffic patterns. So I just wanted to bring that forward. That'd be about $50,000 out of that 190 that we have available to us. Thank you.
For Bjorkman, I really like that idea. I think the police department would like that as well. Councillor Verbeek.
Thanks. Through you, Deputy Mayor. I too like any suggestions that are going to look at enforcement, and I'm not discouraging the idea because I support maybe another couple of them, but I want to ask how helpful the one that we have is. And I should say that in numerous conversations that the Deputy Mayor and myself had with our officers, when we're sending them to what our residents identify as trouble spots, they're trouble spots. They're ticketing people when we're sending them to what we've identified as troubled spots. So these boxes could certainly help us identify more spots. But I'm just wondering if Councillor Gerard, Director Gerard could explain about the one that we have. Has it been used or beneficial at all in directing us to traffic troubled spots? I mean, I think I agree. I want to look at any kind of tool we can to, but will it help modify people's behavior? I think multiple tickets might be a little more effective, but can Mr. Gerard comment on if this is the one we have has been effective for this use?
Director Gerard.
Yes, through you, Deputy Mayor. So the Black Hat devices are not a visual data collection or radar. They're essentially a black box that goes on the side of the road that drivers are unaware of. It collects data. We use it very frequently on speeding, on the type of use of the vehicle that it's capturing, how many vehicles are traveling in each direction, that sort of data. Especially any trouble spots that we know of now. It's a way to achieve some objective data that is unencumbered by the visual sight of a radar sign. So we do have the trailers that we use and we move around in conjunction with the OPP, which does bring awareness to speeding on the road. Whereas the Black Cat device just collects it, let's say silently, without being obvious to the people driving on that road. Does that answer your question, Councilor Verbeek?
It does. And follow up, do you think this would, would this be a good investment for us to address our traffic concerns?
Yep, through you. Yes, I mean, I think it's a good device. I think that it brings objective data to let us know exactly where those troublesome spots are. We could certainly use them. Even the device we have now is aging and requires some repair as it operates on battery power right now. So it needs a lot of babysitting by our operations team when we put it out. But we could certainly use a couple and use them to measure speeding on roads without the drivers being aware of us capturing that data. And it certainly would be a good step forward in telling us exactly where the troublesome spots are or what some enforcement measures that may be required would be.
Thank you. CAO, Mr. Sweet.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just another point Councilor Beek asked. Locally, I know the town of municipality of Leamington has worked with their OPP force with this, and a few of the officers said it's been a great tool for them working with the town of Leamington. So you did ask if it's used regionally. I know Leamington has worked with their town and the OPP.
Thank you for understanding my question, even though I wasn't clear.
Thank you, Councilor Verbeek. Councilor Bondi.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm surprised we're just now hearing about this Black Cat box or whatever device. It would be nice to have this all along. And I support getting one or two, as long as we save some money for Coen Park for Councilor Verbeek. I have a couple questions about the device itself. Can it be used all year round or is it seasonal?
It can be used all year round, although the road conditions can affect exactly what traffic data you're collecting. So if you have it out there during a snowstorm, obviously some people will be traveling a little slower or should be traveling a little bit slower during those conditions. But it can be used all year.
Okay, thank you. And to follow up with that, I'd like to get it on the third concession at some point, please. Another thing that I've kind of been noticing, and there's nothing we can do tonight, but I want to plant that seed and maybe that seed will grow at some point, is that our OPP do a lot of bylaw work. And I did recently watch the last police service board meeting, and I think it's something we need to keep our eye on. If you look at the police service board minutes, our OPP are doing more bylaw work than all of the local municipalities. So that's why they can't do traffic enforcement as much. They're so busy doing bylaw. So maybe it's something in the future where we look at giving assistance to our bylaw department, perhaps having staggered shifts or afternoon shifts, a bylaw department that can apply, go to barking dog calls on the weekend or, after dinner. So it's not the OPP doing that all the time, and the OPP can focus on traffic enforcement. So great idea, Councillor Bjorkman, and I support getting a few. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Guerin.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So for our roundtable discussions, I had that on my list that I'd handed in. They are good devices to use. Again, with us not approving the 190 for a bylaw enforcement officer, we have to put some money towards fixing the problem, finding out where the problems are and getting them fixed. I like the recommendation of getting a couple of them, especially with the news now that the one that we have is kind of older. So we're looking at a number around $50,000. I still believe that we have to try to help Councillor Verbeek with McGregor. So looking at the $190,000 And also Irwin, which we've touched on, putting 61,000 towards a $2 million plus problem is not a lot of money, but it is still money. All the same, $190,000. I'd like to see that kind of take care of all three of those projects. If we were to put 50,000 towards the Black Cat and 88,259 towards Irwin, that would give Irwin $150,000 in the pot. And then another 51,741 to use towards Councilor Beek's request in McGregor. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about that if we can before we make any decision. But that's kind of where I'm thinking. We can maybe use that 190 and cover three things. We're talking about policing. We're talking about a road that we've been talking about since 2014. And we're talking about McGregor that Councilor Beek's been talking to us about since her term of council. So that's where I'm at with it right now. I'd like to hear more about Councilor Beek's McGregor project.
Mr. Bowman, you had a question?
Yes, I believe there's money in reserve for the splash pad for McGregor, is there not? Didn't we put money away previously for the splash pad in McGregor?
241.
Through your deputy mayor, close, 240,000.
Okay, so that would cover our portion of that particular project. So that sounds good. Okay, thank you. And I agree. We're going to have to put money towards Can-Am, and putting some in reserve certainly makes sense.
Councilor Bowman, just so that you're aware, there are other projects with Coen Park. They want to replace the equipment, the playground equipment as well. And there are a few other projects there as well. Councilor Vanderdolen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, just for listeners who might be confused, a Black Cat is just a trade name for a traffic counter box. They've been around since the 1930s. People might be confused. What the heck is this cat thing? There's 8 or 10 of them out there. I don't think Canada started using them in the 50s, but they've been around forever. That's the little rubber lines. You see, there's 2 or 4 of them across the road. That's them. Anyway, as much as I'm in favor of putting some money into Coen, I think Irwin is more important. You know, as Councilor Bowman has said, it's been on the books for almost getting on half a century. And just look at it; it looks like it's 200 years old. So, and since we've already got so much money set aside for Coen, I'd rather lean a little more heavily towards Irwin. I think it's more important and will affect more people. Thanks.
Councilor Vanderdolen, any other comments before we look towards a motion? Councilor Verbeek.
Thanks. Were you satisfied, Councillor Guerin, or did you want to hear a little bit more why my ask was for 100,000?
Well, if I can, through the chair. Yeah, so I know I just think it's important. There is projects that you've been asking for and that the board's been asking for, and we need to start putting more money away every year. And I'm not saying $50,000 is going to get them everything they want, but it's another $50,000 that we could put in there. So, I mean, make your case. I want to hear a little bit more about it.
Okay, when I first became aware that there were all these projects that were needed and at Coen and asked for every year and then just pushed out, understandably, because it's part Amherstburg. It was always, okay, well, we can't move forward with that project until Amherstburg is willing to put up their half. We now know that we're moving towards that right now. CAO Suite with, well, she's not your counterpart anymore, but Heather, who's the Parks Director. And anyway, they're moving forward right now with the, the topical plan. And there's going to be the strategic plan in motion this year. So the things that the park has been working towards and rightfully really should have is equipment. They don't have equipment like all our other parks in Essex, Harrow, and Colchester, right? And because of the excessive use of the park and the Alhambra group, they were hoping for some accessibility equipment when they do put in the park. So it's not, we're hoping for not just like an average park, like some of the very expensive accessible swings and such. So before I was ever elected, our deputy mayor brought me in to be part of a group at Coen that was trying to fundraise for such equipment because it would be such a big ticket item. It kind of fell flat because no matter how much fundraising was done, we had to get Amherstburg on side to match. That's finally happening now. And it hasn't, but it's happening now. So the splash pad that's been promised to Coen to McGregor since 2013, that all the other wards got. That's what the 240,000 is there for right now. So we can move forward with the splash pad. I understand, and I hope I'm wrong, but I feel like at one point I was told it could cost as much as 600,000. So even our half of that would be around the 300,000. Hopefully when this strategic plan gets put into place, Amherstburg and Essex can come on board to start with the two major projects pretty close to completion of the strategic plan. Hopefully we're not just going to be hanging around for 5-10 more years waiting to do these projects. So the first two projects are pretty significant, but they also want to they need to fix up the soccer fields, which I see, Harrow got more money for their brand new complex. I'm not complaining. I'm not comparing. So the lights, the parking lot, the list is pretty significant, Joe. I don't have it in front of me, but it's been hanging there for many, many years. But because everything has to be matched by Amherstburg, all Coen is ever getting is that committed amount from each town. And then they work their butt off to fundraise and get the little things like what they needed, the electrical panel changed and some new tractors and things. And they just use that money and whatever they can from fundraising. Clearly the last 2 years, there's been no money made, just keeping it together with the funds from both towns. But that gem we could put $1 million in it. But anyway, that's why I was hoping to put 100,000 aside, Joe. It would do the splash pad right out of the gate and maybe one of the smaller projects. Because hopefully we'll be able to move forward in 2023 with some things for Coen.
Councillor Guerin.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, so I'll make a motion and we'll see where it goes and see what we can do here. Hopefully we get some support on this. So I'll make a motion that we earmark the $190,000 that we're speaking of for 3 projects allocated as such. $51,741 to the McGregor projects for reserves for them. $88,259 to the Irwin project, which will bring that to $150,000, and $50,000 towards the purchase of a couple of the Black Cat boxes. That's my motion. If you need it read back, just let me know.
Point of information. Isn't 50 a lot too much? I thought Councillor Bjorkman said they were like, no, we were told they were 5,000 to 8,000. Why would we need 50?
So Director Gerard was just saying that 20 grand would be sufficient for 2. Councillor Bjorkman, are you okay with that?
Yes, because my initial ask was for 3 of them, and then the cost it would take for personnel to actually collect the data, read it, extrapolate it, and share it with our enforcement.
Now, that's
there will
where
be some operating costs that go with it.
Gerard?
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I think if we allocate $20,000, it will certainly buy us 2 devices and possibly a third. What we can do is we can look at actual pricing from the manufacturers and get some quotes and come back to council with how many we can purchase for the $20,000. I think that would be an appropriate recommendation.
Go back to Councillor Vander Dolen for a second.
Yeah, just a quick suggestion. How about if we put the remainder in for Irwin? That's my suggestion.
Aaron?
Did you call on me?
Counselor-
Chair? Okay, sorry. Yeah, again, I mean, we could also look back at the administration was looking for some dollars to be put towards miscellaneous assets that come up that exceed budget. So maybe we can, I mean, I'm happy if we can get at least $150,000 in there for the Irwin. I think that's a number anyways. And maybe we look at that difference, put a little bit more towards McGregor and a little bit towards whatever administration feels would be sufficient to help with their request was. I'm just trying to find some, I can't do the math quick enough here, so I apologize for that, but that's kind of where I'm at with it. Maybe Kate can help us there.
Okay, so Director Grusevich is going to give us something here in a second. Did I see somebody else's hand up? Counselor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 30 grand isn't going to make or break Irwin, but 30 grand could do a lot actually at Coen Park. I believe Councillor Verbeek was looking for around 100,000. So I would like to see if we could have a friendly amendment to that motion. The 30,000 from the savings in the boxes go to Coen, which would bring Coen up to 81,741, and Irwin still has 88, and the boxes have 20. I think it's important for that ward to really get a decent chunk of funds. You know, if you look at both urban areas are getting streetscapes, and now we're talking about saving a substantial chunk of money for Ward 3. So I don't know. I'm trying to make sure it's a little bit more fair. I really, according to the Parks and Rec master plan, we are kind of not making some of the targets in the Coen Park area. So when Amherstburg and Essex do come together, I want them to hit the ground running. It's just fair for those residents. So and on that, I would like a recorded vote when we come on that Coen issue discussion, please.
I'll put up the original motion and allow council to take a peek at it. So the original motion included a Coen Park reserve contribution of 51,741, the speed radar systems of $20,000, and $150,000 that was broken out by funding. So if we look at what we are left with for taxation funding, currently we have allocated, $160,000 between those three projects. I'm just going to hide some columns so that you can see exactly. So 30,000 remaining, with 150,000, 88 of it being taxation towards Irwin reconstruction, a Coen Park Reserve contribution of 51, and a speed radar system of 20,000. Again, leaves 30,000 remaining.
Director Grusevich, what does that leave for your top up on the asset?
Through the chair, the initial recommendation was 50,000.
Not included that?
That has not been included in these figures.
Councillor Verbeek.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I understand the need or the desire for the top up funds, but you've heard me. I can't ask any more for. We see the numbers. What Ward 2 is getting in the line of dollars of this entire budget. I'm gonna ask for that 30,000. it's a yes or a no to add on to the 51 for Coen. It is, to address some of the issues at the park, but it's also going towards Ward 2 residents that seem to have got shortchanged in this budget.
Karen.
Gee, Mr. Chair, did you call on me? Sorry.
Yes, Counselor Garen.
Okay. I'm not sure why when it switches back over to your mic, it's just a delay on mine. I don't know if everyone else is experiencing it, but anyhow, I don't have an issue making the amendment to put the 30 more towards McGregor. I just want to clarify when Kate, you showed the last spreadsheet there, that the 88,259 in there, but that's in addition, we still have the other 61,741. It is 150,000 going to Irwin, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
The way the chart showed, it just broke out the funding between OCIF and taxation.
Okay. So if my council colleagues don't have an issue with the 30,000 being an amendment motion with the 30,000 going to McGregor and not going towards the administration's asset ask, then I'll make that amendment.
Thank you, Counselor Garen. So that's a motion, and I'm looking for a seconder. Counselor Verbeek, were you raising your hand as a seconder? Okay, and then any comments on the motion? Counselor Bjorkman. Counselor Bjorkman.
Sorry, no, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I don't have any comment there. Thank you.
You were just being friendly and waving hi.
Just saying hello.
Any further comments on this motion before I call the question? All in favor?
Sorry, Chair Malosh, just a recorded vote on this, please.
Oh, yes, yes, sorry about that. And Counselor Bondi? And we'll just wait, Mr. Oj's just asking a question here, so we're asking for a recorded vote on this motion by Counselor Bondi.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. On the motion that council earmark the 190,000 as reallocated from the OPP traffic enforcement position to the capital budget, that the earmark take place as follows: the amount of 81,741 to the Coen Reserve Project, the amount of 88,259 to the Irwin Reconstruction Project, and the amount of $20,000 to the Speed Radar Black Cat Box purchase. On that motion, as moved by Councillor Garen, seconded by Councillor Verbeek. Councillor Bondi, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Vanderdolen, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Bowman, how do you vote?
Support.
Deputy Mayor Malosh, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Garen, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Verbeek, how do you vote?
Support.
And Councillor Bjorkman, how do you vote?
Support.
With a recorded vote of 7 in favor, none opposed, the motion carries.
So I'm going to thank you, Council, and I'm going to pass it back to Director Garusovic.
Through the chair, I just wanted to provide council with the latest tax rate and where we landed with the county's approved tax rate. Just going to share my screen so that council has that. Another thing worth mentioning would be that we will make all revisions that we've discussed in the past 3 meetings, and we'll provide council with final budget documents so that all these changes are encompassed within your final document. So as you can see here, the county's rate came in at, I'm just going to maximize this a little. The county's approved rate came in at 1.56%. We had initially estimated 1.75%. which on draft one presentation had us at about approximately a 1.8% tax increase on average across all 4 wards. With the county approved rate coming in lower, it reduces the tax increase from 1.81 down to an average of 1.75% across all wards. Just an update on that for council's information.
Thank you, Director Verusevich. That's great news. And unless there's any questions from anyone, I'm going to ask for adjournment. Sorry, I guess there's more resolutions here. Okay.
I was just voting for adjournment.
We have 3 resolutions. The first one being that the 2022 capital budget as presented be adopted in principle, inclusive of all capital adjustments summarized just recently here by our Director Verusevich in the 2022 proposed capital budget at this special meeting this evening, January the 10th, 2022. Moved by Councillor Bowman and supported by Councillor Van der Dolen. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. The second resolution is that any excess from the additional Ontario Community Infrastructure Funds received in the amount of $911,000 be transferred and held on reserve until the approval and completion of the eligible projects occur. Moved by Councillor Bowman, supported by Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? Carried unanimously. And the last is that any portion of the $190,000 reallocated from operating to capital at the December 13th meeting, special meeting, remains unused, be transferred into a reserve designated for the purchase of new capital assets. Moved by Councillor Bjorkman, supported by Councillor Van der Dolen. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Now we're looking for adjournment. Moved by Councillor Guerin, supported by Councillor Bjorkman. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Great sense of cooperation here to try and get this allocated so that we can move on with getting our money spent and getting it done nice and early in the year. Thank you and have a great evening.